Our next speaker is Dr. Murli Krishna. He's senior consultant at MGM Healthcare, and he'll be taking up this topic, eCPR. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Murli from MGM Healthcare. Over the next 15 minutes, I'll briefly deal about the topic of the eCPR. So this is a brief outline on which I'll deal this topic. To start with, a lot of cardiac arrests we see commonly in our practice daily. A part of them we could not revive them in spite of the best efforts of CPR, whatever we give them with the conventional ways. The main reason why we could not revive them is because the primary cause that caused the cardiac arrest, which is an MI or a dilated cardiomyopathy or a pulmonary embolism, we could not address that at that point when they have the cardiac arrest. But if we have a time frame, if the time permits us, these causes are probably treatable. That is where this concept of using veno-arterial ECMO in patients where it is refractory cardiac arrest, where we could not revive the patient, has come. And that's the word eCPR, using a VA ECMO for resuscitation of a cardiac arrest. So to start with, I'll briefly deal with a couple of cases. The first case is a 27-year-old gentleman, dilated cardiomyopathy, waiting for a heart in the ward. He suddenly collapses, then a CPR is initiated. Even after 15 to 20 minutes, you see that you're not able to get him back. In the meantime, inotropes, IBP, everything is started, but you're not able to get him back. So what next in this kind of situation? Similarly, you have a senior citizen, 70-year-old man, acute MI. He presents to the ER with some breathlessness. Then he collapses there. We put an IBP. In spite of that, you're not able to revive him. So what next? So in these kind of situations, that's where the eCPR comes into the picture. So let us look at what are the indications or clinical indications where we can consider the eCPR. The first and foremost is the cause of the cardiac arrest should be a reversible or a treatable cause. And the patient should be otherwise healthy prior to the cardiac arrest. That means we should not have any other major organ disease that becomes a contraindication for this. Or it can be a case with an end-stage heart failure or end-stage lung failure who are waiting for a transplant. Apart from this, if you look at the clinical criteria based upon the situation at the time of cardiac arrest, the CPR should have been started immediately by a standard who is close by, or should be within less than 5 minutes. The CPR should be initiated from the time the patient was found to have unresponsive or dead. Then second, it should be a shockable rhythm ideally, or there should be a transient return of spontaneous circulation. Like we are doing a massage for 30 minutes, in between you get him back for a short time, then again goes back to arrest. Or you see some signs of life, in between you see the patient moving and all. These are all the ideal cases to see. Plus the unit where this is going to happen should have an ability to establish an ECMO in shorter duration. So these are the indications. If we look at the exclusion criteria or contraindications, if the CPR is not started within the 10 minutes of the onset of arrest, those cases we should not consider because of the neurological injury. Similarly, any pre-existing neurological injury or any non-treatable major diseases, they also should be excluded. Apart from this, if you look at the literature, you see that the initial rhythm asystole or where the CPR time more than 60 minutes will also come as contraindications, but they are relative. A lot of times it may be an initial asystole, but we'll be able to get them back. A lot of times it happens after 15-20 minutes, you decide to go for ECMO. By the time you really put them on ECMO, it will be more than 1 hour of CPR. So they are relative based upon the situations. Apart from this, any case where an ECMO is contraindicated because of the patient per se is a contraindication for eCPR. So going with this, let us briefly look at what is required to have a setup of eCPR in a unit or in a hospital. So what are the essential requirements? If you look at what the data that comes out from where the eCPR is performed, you have primarily two types. One is an in-hospital cardiac arrest, that is IHCA, or out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, where the cardiac arrest has happened out of the hospital, patient has presented to the ER, or the people have taken it even to a different level, more so in the Europe and Eastern Asian nations, where they found that even when they present to ER, when the eCPR is down, the outcomes are not so great. So they have taken to the pre-hospital ECLS. There were the photos which were shown by the previous speakers, where the team, upon receiving a code blue call, take the ECMO support there, initiate at a public place, and then ship the patient from where they are to the hospital. So with these settings, what are the essential requirements to set up an eCPR program? One, a robust code blue or ER system, where there is a very quick and response to the patient who is having a cardiac arrest anywhere in the hospital. Second, an active ECMO program so that all the people who are attending to ECMO are there and they are trained well. Third, the availability of expertise to institute the ECMO around the clock, because we don't know when a cardiac arrest case can happen. So the availability of the expertise, including the supportive team and the equipment, that should be available around the clock. These are the essential requirements. And this is how the flow happens when there is a cardiac arrest. Usually the code blue team reaches there first. They start doing the CPR. If they find the patient is not responding even after 10 minutes or so, then they assess the patient initially whether that can be a case for eCPR. After that, they'll escalate it to the eCPR team. The eCPR team comes there, and the leader of the eCPR sees the case and takes the final call. What is more important is all this time a separate team has to ensure that the cardiac CPR and chest compressions are going on. So once the eCPR team assesses, if they find that is a good case to go with it, they'll cannulate, they'll go on ECMO. Only once the ECMO is established and your flows are satisfactory, that is when the chest compressions have to be discontinued. This is how the flow happens. So let us see how we do it practically in a case. So we have to continue the CPR. That is the most important thing, and a good quality of chest compressions have to be continued. That is one of the main factors that determines your outcome, because post-cardiac arrest, one of the major challenges is the neurological injury, and one of the things that determines is how well you would have done the compressions before this. So the person who is leading the team has to ensure that whatever the period it takes time to establish full flows, whether it is 45 minutes or 1 hour, till that time the compressions are good and adequate. The standard way of establishing VA ECMO is percutaneous, which is preferred in certain situations where your lines are difficult, or in a pediatric patients, or in some institutional practices, it may become a surgical cut-on. So percutaneous, it is always good that amongst the team that is available on the site, the most experienced person should step in for this because of the timeline. Second, all lines should be ultrasound guided. This we have heard from the previous speakers also, that all lines should be ultrasound guided. This is very important in eCPR, because when the patient is arrested, it is very difficult to differentiate from the puncture based upon the flow. Whether if it is dark, there is no assurance that it is a vein. Similarly, if the pressure is low, again there is no assurance that it is a vein. And the way we puncture, it may happen that you may puncture the artery, go to the vein, or you puncture the vein and go to the artery. So to prevent all these, a quick ultrasound scan to identify the vessels, and then take an exclusive ultrasound guided line puncture is very important. Again, a word of caution about already existing lines. If you are not sure how they were taken, whether they were taken before by ultrasound or not, then better is not to use them. And preferably Goin vessels, where then you put a guide wire, serially dilate and cannulate. This is a video of establishing VA ECMO. I won't show it fully, but what it shows is this is a total 8-minute video, where at the beginning you just have only the vascular access, but at the end of 8 minutes you see that the patient is already on ECMO. So if you have a robust program, if you have a team, all it takes is only less than 10 minutes to put a patient on ECMO who is having a cardiac arrest. So next comes the most important part, that is the post-resuscitation care. A lot of times it happens that by this time the team is already tired out, but still it becomes very important. We may face a situation where you will have a high mean arterial pressure or high CPR because of loads of adrenaline that is given, or a low flow issue because of low volume or high SVR status. So that has to be addressed, and it has to be optimized. It probably needs a dilator initially to see that the flows are established appropriately. Then the main advantage of eCPR is we can go for a targeted temperature monitoring. You can cool down the patient to 32 to 36 degrees. That is in accordance with the current criteria of CPR management, and cerebral protection and other organ protection has to be ensured. We have to continue full flows till all your metabolic parameters, especially the lactates and other parameters like urine and all, settle down. Then after that, you are going to face all the issues that complications that pertain to the ECMO, whether it is LV distension or Harlequin syndrome that you have to settle. And once all this is done, we have to go upon the primary problem, that was the cardiac arrest, whether it is an MI, or it is a pulmonary embolism, or it is a myocarditis, or this is a DCM patient waiting for a transplant. You have to go on it. So let us look at briefly what is there in the literature. This study shows that eCPR which is done has a good outcomes, and there is an increase in survival to both discharge, not just discharge, at 1 month and 1 year. Similarly, this one shows that when we have a cardiac arrest, the primary thing being a neurological thing, it is not just a good survival, but the neurological outcomes are also good at 6 months and 1 year when compared to a conventional CPR. These both studies are about the in-hospital cardiac arrest. This is a meta-analysis which has concluded that in case of cardiac arrest, especially in-hospital cardiac arrest, the use of extracorporeal life support is associated with an increase in survival rate as well as favorable neurological outcomes when compared with a conventional CPR. So based upon the literature, it is almost clear that in case of a situation of an in-hospital cardiac arrest, eCPR can be instituted in selective cases, and it is shown to have a good benefit. Whereas for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, where the patient presents to us first to the emergency room as an arrested patient, it is contradicting. There are few studies like this which has shown as good as 50% outcomes in these patients. They were able to discharge them. But again, there is a paper last year where they have shown that this is from the France, where they almost 15,000 patients, they have CPR was done outside, of which close to 600 were eCPR. What they found out was there was no difference in survival for out of hospital cardiac arrest between the conventional CPR and eCPR. So that puts a big question about the utility of eCPR or patient selection of eCPR in out of hospital cardiac arrest. Then what they found was the patients who survived amongst the eCPR category are the ones who had initial shockable rhythm, not a pulseless but a shockable rhythm, and who were having in between a transient return of spontaneous circulation. So they are the ones who has done better. Then the third finding what they had in this was when a pre-hospital eCPR, in out of hospital cardiac arrest, you have two ways of doing it. One, once the patient comes to the ICU, that is you do it in the ER, or like as shown in the previous speaker photos, where you can go to the site and do the CPR, eCPR. So a pre-hospital eCPR has shown to have a better survival when compared to an ER CPR. So putting all this, currently the recommendation or literature about the use of eCPR for out of hospital cardiac arrest is still not clear. We need more evidence to say in which patients we can use it. So this is again the data from multiple studies which shows how the outcomes are there. As we can see, when it is an in-hospital cardiac arrest, it is close to 30%, as high as 60% has been reported. But whereas for out of hospital cardiac arrest, as low as 8% survival has been reported. To sum up what we have from the literature, what is the correct patient selection? That is the most important, and we need to note that in all the literature there is no standardization of patient selection. It is at the discretion of the person who is present there, the team leader of the CPR LSO team that is present there. It is at their discretion to choose the patient for yes or no. Then clearly out of hospital, not so good benefits, but in hospital there is a good benefit. Young patients do well. What really matters is the quality resuscitation prior to having instituting the ECMO, and an initial shockable rhythm and transient ROSC have good outcomes. So we have looked at different aspects of it. Let us look at what are the cons of eCPR, what we usually see. The first is the cost. In a patient who had a sudden cardiac arrest, in whom we are going to put an ECMO and keeping it for longer time and having further therapies, to counsel them for this, make them convince, and then do the ECMO in that short period, that may come as a prohibitive thing. Similarly, the complication of ECMO, most of the bleeding complications of ECMO are shown to be more in the eCPR patients compared to the normal patients. And failed cannulations have been reported. In a large series, close to 10 to 15% of times where the attempted eCPR, it has been failed. They were not able to revive the patient because they were not able to cannulate the case. And treating the primary cause on ECMO, though we can say theoretically MI, we can thrombolize or do a stenting, pulmonary embolism, we can go ahead and thrombolize the patient or do the transplant. All these become very challenging in a patient who is on ECMO because he is already on anticoagulation. All these puts up these patients at very high risk. Plus, when the shock progresses, that is when a patient has cardiac arrest, when the shock progresses, at one point it becomes a SIRS kind of picture, where even if you initiate the ECMO, it doesn't make any difference. There you see even after putting on ECMO, you won't be able to initiate the flows or maintain the flows. You see that the patient will have progressive acidosis, you end up in losing the patient. So at what point this really progresses from a reversible to an irreversible SIRS is very difficult to make it out. So that is another major drawback of this, apart from the time frame. The VA ECMO at the maximum we can really plan out is a week to 2, before which we have to settle down the primary problem of the patient and able to get him out of this. So our experience, like Sir said, we have a very active ECMO program here for more than a decade, both adult and pediatric, both VA and VV, and it is a large volume thoracic transplant center. Whatever we have, whatever I have listed as a requirements for putting up an eCPR, everything we have in place, a robust code blue system, an active ECMO program, availability of expertise round the clock. We have done a large series of patients. Most of them are end-stage heart failure and lung failure patients. Apart from that, cath lab arrest and outside hospital arrest also have been done. Around 30 of them have been bridged to transplant, 5 have been bridged to VAD, and 4 of them were able to recovery after doing angioplastics. That was about the first case. Put him on ECMO, then converted to Centumac, then has been transplanted. That's the second case. He underwent angioplasty and he has been weaned off ECMO. To conclude, eCPR definitely makes a difference in outcomes, more so in in-hospital cardiac arrest. Selection of the patient is key. This is not for every patient. And following are equally important. The quality of CPR, how do we maintain? continuing the chest compressions, and post-arrest care. It's good to have a hospital-based protocol. I suggest you all to please go through this, the ILSO guidelines for ECPR. Thank you.